Celtics Talk podcast is presented by 24autogroup.com. 11 locations across New England.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston podcast network. I'm so used to the post-game pods that it's nice to be able to downshift a little bit and start looking forward, because now the Celtics, having dispatched the Atlanta Hawks in 6 games, it's time to put our attention on the Philadelphia 76ers. And while we thought we'd have a series starting on Saturday, and if the Celtics had taken care of business, maybe they could have put Joel Embiid in a tougher spot and forced them to get back out there quicker. But bottom line is, Monday night tips off here in Boston, game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. But here's where I'm at. The Celtics, if we learned anything from this Atlanta series, it's that the Celtics, the only team that can stop the Celtics right now is themselves. And so if they are engaged, if they are locked in, with the Bucks gone, with the other teams left in the East bracket, I see a clear pathway to the NBA Finals. But will they get there? Well, or will the 76ers have something to say about it? We caught up with our buddy from NBC Sports in Philadelphia, Danny Pommells, to talk about the Celtics-Sixers matchup. You'll hear that interview coming up. But I go back to it. So it was weird to have a sweat out. Like game 5, the Celtics were terrible in crunch time. Game 6, they tighten everything up. They play with emotion. You got Jason Tatum exulting after that dunk on the putback from Al Horford at the end. You got Al Horford trash talking the crowd behind the Hawks bench. I need more of that from the Celtics. I need them locked in, focused, understanding that they're the deepest team remaining in these playoffs, that they might be the most talented, especially when you see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown go for 30 points apiece and will the Celtics to a first-round win. But certainly, we thought that series would go a little quicker. We thought it would be a little easier based on the early returns and the way the Celtics dominated games 1 and 2. But bottom line is they're through it. Style points don't matter too much. It does add up, though. I think the Celtics, if they got a harsh reminder that you need to take care of business, you need to get to the finish line of these series as quick as possible. You don't want another scenario like last year where you grinded through 7 games against the Bucks, 7 games against the Heat, and then you ran out of gas against the Golden State Warriors. A chance here, coming off of 6 games against the Hawks. You feel pretty good going into this Philadelphia series. Joel Embiid's health lingering above everything, and we'll get into that with Danny. But can the Celtics take care of business? The other side of the bracket, you'll hear me and Danny talk about it. It's the Heat and the Knicks, 2 teams we did not expect to be on that other side, especially with the Bucks out of play. So the roadmap is there for the Celtics. Can they take advantage? You talked for 10 months now about trying to get back to the finals and secure banner 18. The opportunity is right there in front of them. The biggest roadblock, just that 7-foot MVP Joel Embiid. But that LCL, is that going to come into play? Let's get into our talk with Danny. All right, Danny, Celtics Sixers. Order has been restored to the universe. We're finally back.
Rivalry renewed, yeah.
It felt weird last year for the Celtics finals path to not include the Sixers. It just feels like every year it should have to kind of come to these.
For you guys to just mow them down on your way to the NBA finals.
I wasn't gonna say it, but it is funny. Celtics need 6 games to get through the Hawks while the Sixers breeze through the Nets. And there has been some consternation about the fact that the Celtics have played with their food a little bit too much, but they have had success throughout the Embiid era. I'll start high level. What's your temperature on this series going into it from the
it's
Philly
funny because I'm thinking about what we're going to talk about and lining up connecting the dots and everything. So I'm like, man, what ammunition do I have? And I was like, you know what? Maybe I start the pod with like some sunscreen on my nose with like a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. I'm like, oh, you guys are in the playoffs? I didn't know. We've been waiting around for you since forever. But it's funny listening to Doc Rivers. He's a little worried about all the time off that they're having. He said in practice, they scrimmaged 3 times yesterday, and he felt like that he was on pins and needles every time anybody was running up and down the floor because he doesn't want people to get injured. He wants guys to, stay healthy and avoid any kind of catastrophic things that could happen to, they don't play on Monday. So it's like 10 days off for the 76ers. They do need the rest, though, which was something
Mm-hmm.
Tobias Harris stressed wasn't just for Joel Embiid's knee sprain. He's like, the rest of the team is really banged up as well. I mean, with the temperature, like, listen, they beat the Celtics once this year. Joel Embiid had to go for over 50 to do it. You know what I'm saying? So there is that, I guess there's another level that maybe Joel Embiid can contribute to make this a more, formidable series. But, Jason Tatum stabbed us in the heart with that buzzer beater earlier in the year, similar to what Trae Young did to you guys in Game 5. So
you didn't have to go there, but okay.
Listen, bro, I mean, what ammunition do I have? The last time they beat the Celtics in the series, Andrew Toney was the shooting guard for the Sixers. We got to put it all out there, bro. Like,
I do want to just bring up the fact that one of the signature moments of the Hawks series was a little piece of confetti fell from the ceiling during like game 3 or 4, and that's the moment the Celtics said, "Oh, we're going to the finals." It's just like a little throwback.
I thought you were going to say that was like a harbinger of like, bad omen, but it's a good omen because
no, I think it's a good omen. I think it's a friendly reminder that if they took care of business in that series, what was ahead. And yeah, like I guess I buried the lead. I do have to go back because you mentioned the roadmap for the Sixers is just if Embiid goes supernova like he did in the final regular season matchup, they do have a chance in this series. He's going to be the MVP. He will be the deserved MVP for the way he's played. But the health. What is your concern level with this LCL? I've never even heard of an LCL before. Everyone talks about ACLs and MCLs and all them.
PCL, right?
yeah. How are we feeling about Joel Embiid's LCL?
I'm concerned, just like everybody else. I mean, the strategy of the opposing teams, particularly in the first round, have been to hammer and beat up Joel Embiid. And I mean, he's not, made a stone. So those things have a lasting effect. I mean, last season, Pascal Siakam broke his face in the Toronto series. So he had to wear the mask, similar to Jaylen Brown. And then you have the strategy for the Brooklyn Nets was to have, particularly when they were facing elimination, those 2 games that shifted to Brooklyn, to force anybody but Joel Embiid to beat them. So they were double teaming, triple teaming them, forcing the ball out of his hands. And luckily for the Sixers, Tobias Harris was a guy who stepped up and played well. And I think that's the thing, man, is that I envy Boston's depth and interchangeability. And we talked about this, previously. And it's funny that some things just haven't changed with you guys. And they tried to put Jaylen Brown on Trae in Game 5, but when it came down to crunch time and when it mattered most, it was Marcus Smart face guarding them on the opposite side of the court, not even looking at the ball. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you guys have so the Jaylen Brown thing will work on 98% of the teams in the league, but there's also this other guy that we have who we can stick on the opposing team's best scorer. So I think that interchangeability and the depth with Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, and Robert Williams coming off the bench, like, wait a minute, it's like 8 starters that you guys are like throwing at opposing teams. So I think that's a clear space where the Celtics have an advantage because the Sixers depend a lot on George Niang, who isn't Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, or Robert Williams. They depend a lot on, guys coming off the bench who aren't as long in the tooth when it comes to the playoff experience. So, but an X factor, Chris.
Ooh, I need X factors.
Joe Mazzulla is not as experienced as Doc Rivers, although Doc has, his negative things about him and, some things that people aren't very keen about when it comes to his playoff coaching record. But I think there could be a way for maybe the experience to play a factor between the coaching aspect, and that could play out in the series.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you feel like you're grasping at straws a little bit, but no, I do agree.
Are you here to bring me back to reality, Chris? Are you here?
I'm just pulling you in. You were going. I didn't want you to get too much momentum there. I actually think I do agree with you though that one of the things that played out in the first round of this for the Celtics is that Joe Mazzulla did have some moments where it felt like Quinn Snyder just had that little bit more experience, pushed the buttons the right way, put the Celtics in some compromising positions. Far be it from someone who was around when Doc was leading the 2008 Celtics to a title to besmirch Doc Rivers, but few coaches have had such failure in the playoffs as Doc Rivers. And I do think that is still an advantage for Philadelphia, that he's going to know the personnel. He's going to know what it's like in that moment. And there is a heft that comes with the playoffs. And so we'll see if Joe is sort of ready for it. The important thing, or the good thing for Joe, is that his team has been through so many of these games that he almost, and it's unfair to say autopilot. He needs to be able to put the people in the right situations and push the right buttons. He had a great moment at the end of Game 6 against the Hawks where Marcus Smart took 2 bad 3-pointers, had a turnover, and he pulled them. And that's hard to do because Marcus is the guy that just, normally in that moment, you want him out there, that chaos factor. But Joe knew, like, Malcolm Brogdon was a more steady presence at that point. Put Marcus back in quickly. He ends up getting redemption with a big 3-pointer as they get to the finish line. But I do think there's going to be little things like that. Is Joe able to pull his team in when there's a run, when there's like things go sideways? He's been slow with timeouts at times throughout the season, and including in Game 5. So I will be interested to see that particular chess match. But ultimately, I come back to this. It's like, can Embiid be Embiid in this series, especially if he's hindered? And I just wonder. I wonder if the time off will help. I wonder how the Sixers will play this. How much do they need Embiid to be at 90-95% of what he can be?
They need him 1,000% to be at 90-95%. And we do know this: he will be wearing a brace on that knee. And thankfully, this isn't hockey, so people won't be targeting, that softer area. Or
careful with Marcus Smart. Like, you never know.
Right? I know. I think I'm just trying to put it out in the atmosphere so that, it comes back and brings good returns. But he'll be wearing a brace, so that'll be something different. He finished the Toronto series last year and had a mask on in the second round. This year, it'll be a big brace on his knee, so we'll see how he's moving with that. But for a guy like Joel, man, he depends on a lot of jump shots. So how will that affect his jump shot? So the time for him is going to be really important, just to get adjusted to the brace, figure out how his body's responding to him. And that first game in Boston will be very telltale about how the series is going to be. But the games have been close this year.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Sixers are, if I have the numbers correct, are 13-5 without Joel Embiid this season. So that is worth mentioning, considering his health and his availability could be in question. And we know the best ability is availability, Chris. And it's weird, man, because I have talked ad nauseum about the lack of parity in the NBA and how only the good teams at the top are going to win. And it's really the Sixers, Celtics, and Bucks. And the Bucks aren't even in the playoffs anymore. The Grizzlies are about to lose. The Warriors and Kings are going, nose to nose. So I sound like I have no idea what I'm talking about this season, regardless of what's happened in seasons past.
No.
So I give that may be a little feather in the Sixers cap.
For sure.
There's a little bit of this David Goliath thing going on in the NBA suddenly, and it's tough because of the recency bias that you think, oh, maybe the Celtics will take them lightly, but no, it's just so much rivalry and intensity going on. This is going to be a real kick down, drag out series, and I'm sure we'll get the predictions later on. But I'm thinking Joel Embiid's health is going to be the pivotal thing. Even though they've won games without him this season, his dominance and what he commands, even as a decoy, might help them figure out a way to win this thing.
Well, you mentioned the playoff bracket, and I do think that's just motivation for both sides. Like, no offense to Miami and New York, who have been great, and obviously unexpected that they're kind of on the other side of the bracket.
More beatable teams than who could have been.
Yeah, the thing is, like, the roadmap is there for either the Celtics or the Sixers. Like, get through this round, and it might be a war, but you feel pretty good about going up against that. And like, we'll see what happens out west, but like, sort of, you don't get these opportunities. There's so much, like, even the Celtics last year, we talked about the path being so daunting. They had to play Brooklyn, which was a sweep, but it was tough. KD and Kyrie out there, they did have to expand, and then going 7 games against both the Bucks and the Heat, like, the Celtics had to work. I wonder how nothing comes easy for this team. So I do think this will be a tougher series for them, and I'm eager to see if they're ready to sort of meet that moment. And just like you said, I don't think they'll look past. The one reason I think the Celtics will be kind of locked in is Al Horford. Like, he always gets up for these matchups. What happened down there? Why did it go so bad with Al? Did he get the brunt of the anger when that didn't work out in 2020 and beyond?
You know what? Regardless of what happened there, we get the brunt of the anger of his sister. So she is continually frying Philadelphia and any of their fans at every chance she gets. So regardless of what happened with her, the lasting with him, the lasting effect is his sister still saying that we suck and that we're the worst city in the country. But it was a weird fit thing, and it's a little painful to talk about because that was kind of the catalyst for the Jimmy Butler thing not working out for the 76ers because they put all their eggs in the Ben Simmons basket. And while in theory, playing Simmons and Horford at the same time should have worked, it just didn't. It didn't work with Embiid and Horford on the floor at the same time. And if I look at the way things played out, it was really them choosing Ben Simmons over, making it work with Jimmy Butler, making it work with Al Horford. And it was Brett Brown, the Sixers' former coach, who anointed and endorsed all of that and said that, we're going with, Ben and we're going to invest in him. And obviously Brett had, or maybe not so obviously to some people out there, Brett has a long-standing connection with Ben Simmons' family, having coached his dad in Australia, having known Ben since he was knee-high to a Coke bottle. So it just gives you a little bit of that fatherly, nurturing that maybe he didn't need. And it turned into like a snowball effect for the 76ers. So, but I think you bring up Horford, that's the X factor, right? You have these two teams going at it, who historically are big time rivals, but these guys are millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, whatever you call these people nowadays. And I say that lovingly, but it's just that, they don't remember Dr. J and Larry Bird and all that stuff, but they do remember how they were treated or felt during their career. And Al Horford, I'm sure, has a little chip on his shoulder. And not maybe spitefully, but just like, I want to knock out my former team from the playoffs, which any former player would want to do. But that just gives him a little extra motivation, a little bit more, maybe knows some nuances and tendencies that players who are currently on the Sixers might not like who he played with. So I don't enjoy that part of it because it's just another thing to stack on top of like what the Celtics could or how they might perform. So.
I'll say this. So
he turned back the clock, though. He turned back the clock. You couldn't have expected him to return to the Celtics and be better than he was before. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's kind of baffling. He was spectacular last season, and actually he had a moment in Game 6 yesterday where he hits a big late game 3-pointer, turns and barks at someone who was chirping him. I thought it was on the Hawks bench, but it might have been in the crowd, and sort of said,
"Marvelous pass by Marcus Smart."
Right. I mean, this great look. But Al said after the game, we never see Al sort of have that swagger to him, and he sort of said, "If you trash talk me, it usually doesn't end well for the opponent." And I was like, "Whoa!"
Right.
And now here on the cusp of going up to Philly, where he's going to get booed, where he's going to hear some jeers about that. So I do wonder. Al isn't quite on the same level defensively that he was last year. It's to be expected. He's going to be 37 in a couple weeks. It's hard to maintain that level, and yet I think he's going to be so supremely motivated that I'm eager to see how he takes on that challenge of whatever level of Embiid they put out there and how he responds there. I do want to give you a chance to give me some more Philly X factors. Like, who's got to be great here? I mean, Tobias tends. Is it just all fall on Maxey? Because the scoring guards have given the Celtics some fits, as we just saw with DeJounte and Trey.
Well, they are, Marcus Smart isn't quite a spring chicken. You know what I'm saying? So a guy like Maxey who can get up and down and kind of force him to burn some of that energy or play, at his highest level of defense more often. Because I imagine you wouldn't even, James Harden is probably easier to control, so you don't need to put Smart on him. You put Smart on Maxey. It's really up to Maxey and Tobias because, as I said, man, it's just the Celtics have so much depth. I mean, that game where the TNT guys were making fun of Derek White and his hairline. He had 26 that night, in a night where, you know what I'm saying? It's just like you get a guy who comes off the bench and just helps you win the game. And it's Sixers aren't quite that team, and they don't have quite as much consistency or in those areas. So Tobias stepping up with, Harden and foul trouble or being ejected, and Joel Embiid hurt. He stepped up and had a great game against Brooklyn, although Tobias is a New York guy, so I'm sure there were a lot of fans and family in the stands. So extra motivation once again, to play well and do well. So it's the other scorers outside of the two superstars, Harden and Embiid, because those are the guys that are going to get you the extra, possessions, second chance points, and things like that. And Paul Reed, which sounds like a guy who shouldn't be mentioned here when we're talking about, all these all-star level type of players, but he brings an energy that the Sixers have lacked, and a more steady hand at the backup center position that they've lacked, which also sounds like, oh, you're worried about backup center? Like, what is that? But what we've dubbed it like an acronym, NEM, non-Embiid minutes. So the non-Embiid minutes go to Paul Reed, and he's in there, getting you offensive rebounds and tapping it back out to shooters and, forcing the other team to work on the glass. So it just brings a little bit more of that, like you said, X factor of, oh, well, what is this guy going to bring? What do you expect? And his offensive game sometimes surprises you. So those three guys, Harris, Maxey, and Paul Reed, because you got to match the intensity, depth, and experience the Celtics have somehow. So energy is a good way to do that. Speed is a good way to do that. And the Sixers are also the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. So that's a thing that hopefully the shooters are intact and in tow and stroking the basketball like they should. So I think those are some things I think about. And I hate to think about where the Celtics kind of consider the weaknesses of the 76ers, because I'm sure that they take them a little more lightly than I would like, because I don't see them as being as formidable outside of Joel, or as much of a concern for the Celtics because of the way they played the regular season. But who knows? It's the second season for a reason, right?
And that's where I'm at with it, is that I think the one thing that I think if you're a Celtics fan, you're fearful of is the free throws. Like Harden and Embiid can live at the line and make the offense a little bit easier at a time of year where it's tougher to score. And so, but the big thing for Philly should be, like, the Celtics just struggle getting out of their own way. And there are just multiple times in these games where their offense will go cold, where they just sort of lose their focus, and it's on Philly to make them pay in those moments. And I
try to soften me up, Chris.
I'm just trying to tell you. I'm just like I'm just trying to give you some pointers here. Those non-Embiid minutes, like if they win those, like, that could be deadly for the Celtics. The Celtics have to lean on their depth in that instance and show, why they got Malcolm Brogdon, why they have the luxury of bringing Robert Williams off the bench at this point. They don't take advantage of those situations. They can compound matters and make this a far more difficult series. And yet I go back to it every time I want to get into the minutia. It just so much comes down to Embiid. And if he's out there and if he's himself, that will dictate just where this series goes and how long it will last. But you did bring it up, and so I'll get you out of here on this. How does this series play out, Danny? I need the honest Sixers hat wearing, Celtics Six liking truth.
Oh, do you see that? Do you see that right there?
I love that.
Listen, man, they got to get one of these two in Boston to start. That's the only. You can't come back down 0-2, and then you're in this Game 7 situation where you're trying to win 4 in a row. Win 2 at home, and then 2 more after that. It's just a tough. You don't have home court advantage. You got to try to steal one of these two in Boston. If you're asking me to predict, it's difficult when I see the landscape of the NBA and these,
we can make sure no one in Philly sees this. I'll make sure this is geographically locked for Boston so that you can just.
Man, I'm going Sixers in 7 is what I'm gonna say.
Wow.
I know, right? I'm gonna go Sixers in 7, and I'm gonna say that somehow, some way, there is a game-winning buzzer beater that factors into the series to kind of to sway the things. They've been really evenly matched during the regular season, even early on in those first 2 games when they played the Celtics. That wasn't necessarily a blowout, where the Sixers fans also had kind of expected that at the time. And obviously the Jason Tatum buzzer beater that was just amazing to watch, a great game, also sticks out. Hopefully Embiid doesn't have to play at that 52-point MVP level type of way in order for them to win games. But I think the Sixers have a chance, considering the landscape of the NBA. I think something's in the water, Chris. Something's in the water.
You better hope something's in the water. You better hope the Celtics get some sort of ailment, some maybe multiple players going down with stomach bugs, because that's your only roadmap. Look, I hate being bullish about this team because the Celtics love to play with their food and make things more difficult. So I can see a 7-game series. I actually think you're right there. It could very well go 6 or 7. Like on paper, I look at this matchup and I say, oh, Celtics in 5, but then you'll get into it, and Embiid will be, I just know how this is going to go. Like we're going to hear all week about how Embiid's knee is bothering him, and then he's going to score 50 in game 1, and we're going to be like, okay, right. like let's can he maintain it? Like we'll find out. But I do think that it'll be, if nothing else, it'll be a lively series, and I'm eager. But I do like watching you twist yourself in a pretzel trying to figure out how the Philadelphia 76ers
Listen,
are.
Man, what do you want me to do? Soft pretzel, mustard, whatever. I'm all twisted up in it. Yeah.
Let me give you an easier one. What's my dinner spot when I'm down in Philly? Like it doesn't even have to be cheesesteak. What's my go-tos when I'm down there?
Do you have a cuisine that you really like?
So usually, what's funny is I always root for teams like Miami, and my mom lives down in South Carolina, so I like southern comfort food and stuff like that. But
me
barbecue.
And my wife are going to drive down to Charleston, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but go ahead. But you like Southern food?
Southern food, barbecue, Mexican, like.
Oh, barbecue. Let's go Mike's Barbecue. That will be the
okay.
place for you. Mike's Barbecue. It's been reviewed by some of the food reviewers out there, and I feel like if you say the word barbecue, that is a great place, not too far from the stadium. It's in South Philly, so Mike's Barbecue is my recommendation.
All right, I'm adding it to the list because otherwise I'll just end up at like Chipotle or something. So sometimes it's a matter of convenience. All right, so we will check back at some point during the series, and
please do. Yeah,
we'll check your predictions. We'll check your temperature. Go revel in your football team because they're in a good spot, and ours is not. Yes. You guys pretty much sent us in a spiral.
And Matt Patricia is coming.
Yo, that's right.
Yeah. So there you go.
I don't know if you asked Patriots fans, I'm not sure they're going to say that's a positive for y'all. But he did have his moments up here, so hopefully you guys figure out how to best utilize him. But stop drafting so well and stop doing that. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Speaking of drafting, if I'll leave you with one thing. If forever, regardless of how this series tips and how it plays out, just always remember the Philadelphia 76ers could have had Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum on the same team.
Oh, my God.
Dominating the NBA for years and years and years.
You almost made me curse, Chris. You almost. But I'm a professional. I pulled it back in. Just
remember, you'll always have the Philly special over New England. You can always rub that right back in our faces. So, well, Danny, good luck in this series. We'll catch up with you.
I appreciate it.
All right, good stuff from Danny. Even if I have to admit, like he was grasping at straws throughout that interview. Like I'm not even trying to do like a Boston Philly smack talk here. I feel pretty bullish on the Celtics' chances, which I keep saying is odd because I don't usually feel like overwhelmingly optimistic about this team. I know their flaws and I know what can derail them, and so I tend to err on the side of maybe a little bit of caution in terms of what I think. But I just think in this matchup, a motivated Al Horford, a hindered Joel Embiid, and if the Jays bring their A game, I don't see the roadmap for the Sixers to be super competitive here. Now, I said I didn't even know what the roadmap was for the Hawks to win a game, and they won 2. So, we'll continue to trade cautiously here. But I go back to it. Things have lined up pretty well for the Celtics, and it's going to take a lot of things breaking right for Philadelphia to push the Celtics here. I can't wait, though, because the intensity of this series will go up a level. It's one thing to be down in Atlanta with a lot of green in the crowd. It's another where it's going to get pretty rowdy in Philly. Celtics need to take care of business, starting with Monday night's game at the Garden. We'll be back with you, post-game pods throughout the playoffs. Stick with us. I hope you watch our coverage. We'll have pregame, halftime, postgame. Keep checking us out on the podcast. Go like, subscribe. Check us out on the YouTube page. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk podcast.